Hello everyone, this is Bradley. Several days ago, I have made this fish parade animation. I hope you have already watched the render and the demonstration. This is completely procedural using animation nodes. You can download and know more about animation nodes from the link in the description. If you have watched the demonstration, then you may think this tree is huge, but it's actually much easier than you think. The issue is that the right upper corner is for camera, which is something that you don't need to worry about in general. So I also won't do a tutorial unless being requested. And I think I will do a more simplified version, which is easy and enough for you to understand. So let's just work through this entire whole thing. So let's get a very brief overview about the principle of this animation. So I basically randomly generate a spline and ask the fish to move along these splines. It's that simple. For different fishes, they should go with a common path, but also a little bit of variance. So it's that simple. So let's start to create our fishes. I will shrink to x, and that's it. And I need an object instance. Usually, if I'm going to model, I will make a single instance. After finishing the entire animation, I will make them multiple instances with a loop. But in this time, because I would like to preview the action of multiple objects in real time, so I need to create a loop directly from this node tree. And let's just viewport input. For viewport input, as you always know, it's just get a kind of viewport inputs in the viewport so that you don't need to always go to the trees. Usually what you can do is to create an integer so that you plug that in. But this is there's also another way to do. So now the integer will start with a default value of 0. But you can also go backwards. So let's change the instance 5 and go backwards. Then we instantaneously create instances. And additionally, it actually will keep the values of original parameter, which is actually very handy. This technique also applies to the loop input as well. And just instances, and I will create enable the copy full object so that name will be copied as well. Which is just a better organization if I'm just typing cube so I can search all these functions, whatever. Then I need to create a splines. I need a random vector, and I need to create a list. And plug the count back to another viewport input. To generate spline from these vectors, just vector from points. And then to preview this whole thing, I need the curve object output. Let's make the entire path cyclic so that it can loop. So now we've done this. So you can increase the count so that the paths will be more complex. But obviously this spline looks very ugly. You can just use smooth bezier spline. Then it will smooth everything out. Usually I will keep the number as its default value. If you change the values, usually it will make the entire thing more ugly. But maybe this is also something you want in specific circumstances. But usually I will just stay as it is. Then so now this is the common path. But we need to add a variation. That's why I need a loop. So I create a vector list. I've actually made a tutorial talking about the loop function, but it's kind of outdated. There are some mistakes. But in general, if you are talking about difference between iterator and the parameter, it's that the iterator, you input a list, but for each loop, it will output only one object into the loop. But for vector list, you input a list, it will output as a list as well in the loop. So this is the difference. Yes, I basically need to copy these entire two trees. So I need to create a spline within this loop. but I also need to add a variation. So I need a random factor. And I need to also create a list so that so now I have 5 points on this spline. And for each of these 5 points, I want to have a different vector added on them. Then vector math. And simply add them. Then instantaneously I will create a different splines. So now this scale is already set in to 2. And if I connect these splines to that splines, then it will generate a completely different loop. This is too different, but if you change the scale to 0, then it will go back to the original loop. So this is the case. So I just keep that maybe 0.5, something like that. Actually, you can plug that back into the loop. So to set that parameter. But anyway, by doing so, it still does not actually generate different spines for different objects, because the seed will always be kept the same for all of these loop. So to change the seed, you just make an index. Index is numbered, it will be varied for each calculation. So for object 1, the index will be 0. For object 2, the index will be 1. So which means for each different object, the seed will be changed. If the seed changed, then path will be changed as well. So it creates the variation. So this is basically the principle. That easy. Next thing that we need to consider is to ask the object to move on this spline. So we need to evaluate spline. The good part of this evaluate spline nodes is that you have location, tangent, and normal. So if you don't consider about tangent, normal, or radius, so if you change the parameter, then the object will move. Very straightforward, but it's not aligned to the path. But by using this tangent, then they will align to the path. In this particular case, a very easy way to do is to use a compose matrix so that you can preview everything better. So let's plug the location to the translation and the tangent to the rotation. And it will instantaneously generate a direction to rotation. And now if we use a 3D viewer, so you can see the axis actually has been aligned with this loop. So like now the green line, which is actually the y, is pointing outwards, and it will be kept pointing outwards, like that direction, according to the spline. So things like that, and you can always make the object, make a matrix as an object by use object matrix output. So let's plug the object to the object and the matrix to matrix. So now we have this object aligned with that, which is very cool. But another issue you can find is about this alignment. So several things you can potentially do is, one way to fix this issue is just to add the original object so that you can align that with modeling. But I don't like this, so I will make a ruler math. I think this is yeah, this is how it works. So now this is okay. Because there's a variation between the paths, that's why it looks kind of weird, but it's working fine. Yeah, so if you're looking at the fine sheet, actually the path it goes through, then the orientation is completely correct. So for this part, this is basically done, and you just increase the amount of instances. Then you can see how they actually go a different path of these splines. And of course, you can just change the scales of these objects, like shrink their size or so. Let's make a vector from value. Then this is basically done. This looks kind of weird. Let's organize this tree better. But yeah, basically this is done. But the next issue is how to make this animation loopable, which actually is very important. Let's also change some other settings so that we can actually work with that. Yes, so the next step to discuss is how to make this entire animation loopable, because now the parameter is clamped to 0 and 1. So it's not loopable. Then we need a function which is called float map, which is called a modulo. Modulo is like it's a very interesting function. Where's modulo? Yes. So it's kind of hard to explain. So basically the concept is if I have 4 and 2, then it will output 0. The function is basically like 4 divided by 2. So if I like make it 1, then the output 1. But if I make it 3, it'll still output 1. If I make it 5, then still output 1. So this is the case. It will just go cycle over and over again. In this case, what we can do is I want it to loop within one range. So I can just increase the numbers. You can see instantaneously everything has been worked out. You just increase the numbers, then it will run cycle over and over again. And of course, I'm not going to manually keyframe the entire thing. I'll just make it a time info. But time is also too fast. It always outputs 1. So the thing we need to do is we need to put a fraction. Let's get a division and select these nodes, hit U, and you can see a panel. Go to socket setting, you can enable the frame rate. Another way to do this is just to open out the M panel, but this is kind of shortcut key. So now it should be able to work because I'm outputting a fraction. So it will also output a fraction which is smaller than 1. It will cycle over and over again. So animation part has been done. But I need to also create a variation. Like now they are basically the same speed, velocity, and other things, which is very tedious. So how to do this is we can put a function. So firstly, I want to have a kind of delay, a kind of offset in their location. This is easy to do. You have a delay time. You put the time in, and I also generate a random number. So by using these delays, they will delay, but now they have delayed with same amount of time, which is basically very dumb. Then if what I want to do is I put a difference C and make it like maximum 10. So now they have a delay. So if I keep this random number like 0, then they will start at the same point. But now if I change this max the random value, then they will have an offset to each of the instances, which is good. And as you know previously, that the index will change with the seed, so that's why they have a different numbers. But now another issue that you come up with is firstly they run too fast. To slow them down, it's kind of actually how to say how to slow them down. It's just like it just I usually just add another math like 0.25, like they can be slowed. So these things can be tweaked very easily. But now you offset their starting point, but you actually did not get any difference in their velocity. This is also very easy to change. You just need a random number from minimum to 1. No, from 1 to 1, I think. Put the seed and put a number. So now it does not change anything. All the objects are actually running the same speed. But if you create a variation in the time flow, then their speed will be different. You can see it's actually too fast. You can see now here we have a turtle. Let's increase the time range. Let's make it 5,000. So now you can see we have a turtle moving on these splines, while other fishes are moving so fast. So basically, this is the idea. I think this tutorial has been done. I mean, you can definitely do more and more stuff, create more variation, like even change the size. But essentially, it's the same principles. Oh, by the way, of course, like all these objects now are basically a square facing to you. But what if I want to rotate? Then you can change the X so they will rotate. I think it does not happen to the fish really, but definitely this is. But this is also something I done for squids because I think it will make more interesting for squids, not the fish. To do this is also very easy. Just create a random ruler. No, actually random number. And combine ruler. Remember to use degree, or actually not necessary to use degree. And plug that to X. No, actually I will use degree because it will be easy to understand with this 90, and then plug with this index. So now they have rotates along X. More straightforward. And basically this is it. So I think this is done. These are basically major points for me to actually discuss. The tree is not actually hard, right? You can definitely work with more seed. I don't think there's anything new that I should really discuss with you. Maybe discuss the camera a little bit more. To get a camera is basically very easy. So we have the cameras, and I need to point them to a target. The way I do is get random list element. So this is the list, and I only need a single element. So this element can be one of these fishes, like in this case cube 003. I can increase the instances, of course, and definitely increase the scale of randomness. And in this case, for the camera, I have track it, and I copy data path. Then attribute output. You plug no, not object. I plug it into value, and object will go with object. No, object will just be cameras. And then I paste this data path. So the data path will be just a random number generated, and you can just change the seed, so you can see the cube actually has been changing all the time. And of course, you can just add random vectors to the camera as well. Objects transform output. Just choose the cameras and use the vector. The reason I do this is because I don't know how to actually position the camera in this case. So whatever. It's also possible to use a vector wiggle so that you can shake the cameras. There are many different things that you can do. I'm not going to do all the details. I think it's kind of very dumb to actually talk about. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Oh, by the way, maybe you are wondering about shading. Shading is very easy. Actually, you just create a box, make it glossy materials, and add a HDRI word. Then everything will be done. So let's just quickly do that. Create materials. So now I just roughly did the shaders. Basically, it's just kind of word HDRI environments. You can definitely change a lot of things, like even at a normal or not bump. Noise and put another noise. Basically, just to make it 500, 1000, 1000. Put a color to vector and color to vector, color to height. Bump. Hopefully, it actually does not crash my computer. Actually, this is too much. So make it 500. 500. 25. 35. And also decrease the strength so that I do better. It's also possible if you don't, maybe these edges is too hot that then you can just add subdivision surface. Oh, actually too much. Shade is smooth actually. Then this work looks kind of nicer. Yeah, basically shade smooth, clean up the hard edge. So now you have this interesting whatever stuff. Just add some roughness to our fishes as well. So you can really do a lot of things. So I'm not going to discuss more things. I think this is done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I'll probably see you next time. Bye bye.